Before we even begin to look at the role of the media, Dr. Ndlechana here, help me look at the ANC itself today. Over a month to Mangaung, where is the ANC and how is the ANC today?
I think this campaign has been a lot better than the previous campaign. There's less passion here, there's less hatred for individuals. In 2007, obviously, you would remember that there was a lot of acrimony, there was a lot of passion and uncommon behavior of the ANC. Certain people were hated passionately, and that tended to detract attention away from the real issues. So there wasn't really a discussion of policy issues as such, because people went there passionately hating certain individuals and were determined to take them out.
So it was more like playing a man, really, rather than playing the issues.
That's one. And secondly, it was more inwardly focused. It was more about the party itself. This time around, the dynamics have changed. Yes, it is still about the party, the ANC, but at the same time, it's more about what kind of an ANC do you need to lead society. So you're not looking for an organizational person. You're not looking at saving the party, rescuing the party per se, but you're also, in trying to repair the party, you're also looking at what kind of a candidate do you want to lead society broadly. So it goes beyond the ANC,
right.
Connecting both ANC and society, a leader for the ANC and a leader of society. So that's one thing. The second thing is that because there isn't this antipathy, animosity amongst the contenders, you don't have the same Thabo Mbeki, Jacob Zuma rerun of 2007. In fact, now you have none of the candidates really attract any intense animosity. And because of that, I think you are getting a lot more discussion on policy issues. And the question keeps on coming up a lot more is that what kind of a leader do you need? An ANC leader do you need to lead society broadly? Which is a lot better discussion to have than simply focusing inwardly, because the ANC really, as a leader of society, you need to transcend your own organizational parameters. Because ultimately the ANC not only leads itself, but it leads society. So for me, it's a lot more interesting and exciting than it has been for a while.
I understand what you're saying right now is that the ANC and perhaps the whole of South Africa are uniting now behind the issues, the policies, as opposed to uniting behind individuals. But it's difficult to really separate that from what we see on daily basis, Dr. Ndlechana.
Well, I think it's part of the pathology that inflicts the ANC. That is why the ANC has been talking of a renewal. Because ultimately, I think people have forgotten why they joined the ANC. The ANC has really degenerated to a very unbelievable levels. Membership, there's a disjuncture in the ANC between what they believe has to be done and the will to do what they know is right to do. The ANC is quite good at self-criticism. The SGs, for instance, of the ANC historically have been a lot more critical of the ANC than critics themselves. You look at their reports, very scathing at the ANC, and they've always then prescribed what ought to be done to take the ANC to a different level.
Okay.
What lacks is the will to do that.
Three issues: the will to do that, and of course the disjuncture at the ANC. And you're talking about unity behind issues and policies. Do you agree, Professor Tawana Kupe, Dean of the Faculty of Humanities at the University of Wits?
From the perspective of what media covers, I think the league is right on the issues that he's raising. But what you often see in the media can slightly different. You often see this contestation between coverage, which frames issues around contestation between individuals. A big theme in the media.
Suban, you are a cartoonist. What do you make of what has been said here by Dr. Ndlechana?
I need to disagree with him a little. I think there is a lot of hatred and underlying innuendos in the ANC at the moment. I don't think everything is so good. You said there is a lack of hatred at the moment, but I think if you went onto the social network, you would find another side to the story.
Mm.
And I think Motlanthe was actually threatened by the MK veterans this week not to stand against Zuma. So what do you say about that? And I think Zuma has to win at all costs at Mangaung. Otherwise, he will have to have his day in court. So he has to win.
So what you're saying here, Dr. Ndlejana, I'm talking to people who are in the media, and of course, before we even discuss and unpack the ANC itself, they want to go to the media, and it's understandable. So what we see in the media is not what is happening in the ANC.
Well, comparatively speaking, there's less ugliness in this campaign. Well, you obviously have the odd passionate activists, the veterans who are adult versions of Julius Malema, really. They're adding a very unbecoming element to this entire campaign, but that is what they are. But I think in the main, you for instance, you haven't had the banning of shirts. It's too early, obviously. Perhaps once say Motlanthe stands up and say, yes, I am available, you might have those incidents coming up. But partly for me, the reason why I'm prone to believe that those ugly scenes might not be as prominent now as they were previously is because Motlanthe has sought to add a lot more dignity to the proceedings. He has
as opposed to who?
Well, previously you had candidates or their proxies going out to war on behalf of their candidates.
Right.
And Motlanthe has even discouraged, for instance, Julius Malema from speaking on his name. Right. So he has injected a lot of decorum in these proceedings. The only bad element really are the veterans, whom by virtue of them being veterans, you would have thought they would behave a lot more differently, respectfully, but they have done quite the opposite. On the media is in the business of sensationalism.
Yes.
The media sells newspapers. But the important thing for me about the media is really, are there any voices within this campaign that have not been heard by the media? That's the critical thing. If we are to fault the media, we should then fault them on repressing certain voices within the campaign. So far, I haven't had any of that stuff.
Professor Kupe, do you agree?
Yes, yeah. I think, you see, when it comes to the media, you outlined at the beginning who really constitutes the voting, the people who are actually going to vote at this election. If you remember last time in 2007, one of the criticisms even coming from the media itself was that there wasn't enough focus on the branches. And so the outcome, if you read the media that time, a particular candidate, Msimbeki, was going to win, especially if you're talking about the newspapers. But then it turned out that he didn't win. But if you had been covering the branches properly, you would have a sense that there was a preference towards the candidate, Mr. Jacob Zuma, at the time. So what is lacking for me, and that's where I would agree to some extent with the colleague, is that I never get a sense of what happens at the branches and what are the branches thinking and actually discussing. Are the branches assessing the leadership, which is what I understand should happen? You assess the leadership over the last 5 years in relation to the policies of the ANC and what it wants to do. Then thereafter, you nominate, you make your preference for who should be voted for various positions, and you also elect delegates that are going there. One doesn't get a good sense of that, except that a week or two ago, one of the Sunday papers had a very interesting story about the branch which is around the president's home in Kandla. And this branch took a long time to get to vote because they didn't have a quorum. And they resorted to, according to the paper, they resorted to all sorts of ways of trying to create a quorum, sending out cars, rounding up people, and eventually late afternoon or early evening they voted. But even when they voted, it wasn't that everybody was there. They used a technique where the people who had then come and registered were considered part of a quorum.
Professor Kupe, we know that it's the branches really that will be going to Mangaung and vote, but the appetite for the media to cover the branches, you're saying it's lacking until recently. Do you?
No, I'm not saying that it's until recent. I'm saying there isn't enough of it.
Okay.
I'm saying that if you are going to cover an election, where certain categories of people vote, and they're the people that will really vote. What would be interesting to readers, to listeners, is for the media to be out there with their branches.
I'm asking that question in response to Dr. Ndlejana's assertion that the media obviously is in the business of sensationalism as well. So I'm saying then to sell the newspapers, to sell airtime and so on and so on, to cover a branch that is far away, won't sell unless there's a big name attached to it.
Yeah,
is that how we operate?
To be sure, yes. But I mean, who are branches discussing? They're discussing the big names. I think quite correctly, what Ndlejana is saying, that they're in the business of selling newspapers. They're also, because of the way, if they can't for any reason, whether it's logistical, financial, won't sell, it's not a correct commercial strategy. What then ends up happening, or appearing in the media, is a focus on individuals, albeit, as Ndlejana says, to a lesser extent than 2007. But one is none the wiser about what the people who are going to vote are actually going to do.